Honda's reputation just took a hit no one expected. From touring legends to everyday commuters, owners are discovering recall letters that read like confessions. Bikes built for endurance now carry the same warning word, defect. Veteran mechanics are speaking up, riders are furious, and the brand that once meant bulletproof reliability is suddenly under fire. What happened behind those factory doors, and why didn't anyone say something sooner? Stick around, because this story doesn't start in a boardroom, it starts in your own garage. The quiet pattern breaks. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration database now lists multiple open campaigns tied to Honda motorcycles across categories once thought bulletproof. Touring, ADV, and sport touring models that riders trusted for cross-country reliability suddenly shared the same red-letter word: recall. Each entry followed a familiar rhythm. Potential failure. Corrected in production. Owner notification. It was the kind of language that hides chaos in calm words. For decades, riders swore by Honda's precision. Their bikes were the machines you could ride coast to coast without carrying a toolbox. But as the filings stacked up, veterans began asking the question that had not been asked in years. What happened to Honda's line discipline? These weren't forgotten budget bikes or obscure imports. These were the flagships, machines that symbolized mechanical trust. Forums lit up as the news spread. Gold Wing owners, Africa Twin riders, CB loyalists, all comparing notes. The failures weren't dramatic explosions. They were quieter, more insidious. A flicker of a light, a soft stall, a lever gone loose, things that eat away at confidence long before they show up on paper. For Mike and every seasoned rider like him, this was personal. Reliability isn't just a spec. It's peace of mind at 70 miles per hour, two up with luggage, somewhere between state lines. When that confidence is shaken, every mile feels heavier. Yet beneath every recall notice, an older scar began to ache again, one that no inspection could erase. Heat where it never belonged. Before the fuel issues, before the electronics, there was the heat. The Gold Wing, the crown jewel of long-distance touring, carried a ghost from years past. In the early 2010s, reports surfaced of rear brakes dragging after riders released the pedal. What seemed like a minor nuisance turned into a serious hazard. In rare conditions, excess friction created heat capable of sparking flames. Honda's own recall documentation for the GL1800 laid it out in plain text. A malfunction within the secondary master cylinder assembly could cause the rear brake to remain partially engaged. The result was not theory. Some owners reported smoke curling from beneath the panniers. Others found blistered paint on swing arms after long rides. A machine known for flawless cross-country endurance had suddenly betrayed its riders with the simplest mechanical sin: heat where it didn't belong. The recall spanned years, with dealers replacing parts and flushing lines, yet doubt lingered. Gold Wing riders never used to question brakes, but trust, once cracked, never seals clean. The flaw wasn't just mechanical. It betrayed Honda's legacy of over-engineering and perfection. For veterans, it felt like a clockmaker missing a gear, a sign that engineers still cared, but accountants had started calling the shots. If heat once betrayed the rider, silence would do far worse in the years ahead. If you've ever trusted a Honda key, hit that like button right now. Let's see how many real riders still believe craftsmanship matters. Drop a comment. What's the worst factory failure you've seen? Your story might prove this isn't isolated. When the impeller swells, the road goes dark. The next ghost hid inside the tank. A microscopic flaw in the heart of the fuel system, the impeller within the pump, began a slow process that ended with sudden silence. The recall filings described it clinically. Improperly molded low-density impeller material may swell under certain conditions. In plain English, that meant the part could expand until it locked itself in place, starving the engine of fuel. Imagine riding at highway speed, the engine humming steady when it simply stops breathing. No sputter, no warning light, no countdown, just stillness. throttle becomes decoration. Momentum fades, cars close in from behind. It's the kind of failure that makes even experienced riders grip the bars tighter when they read about it. The recall hit adventure, touring, and sport models alike. One faulty fuel pump exposing a chain of cheap materials, flawed lab tests, and supplier shortcuts. For riders raised on carburetors, this fragility feels alien. The once bulletproof Honda badge now demands constant recall checks. And worst of all, most riders never know until the engine dies beneath them. A single flawed plastic disc ending miles, memories, or even lives. Some failures scream, others vanish without a trace, until a rider feels it in his bones. If reliability still matters to you, make sure your setup's solid. The same tools and gear I trust, linked in the description. The lever that left the ride. If the fuel pump represented silent failure, this one shouted. The CB and 𝒉𝒅 𝒔 series faced an issue that was as simple as it was unforgivable, a shift lever that could detach mid-ride. The official bulletin described it as insufficient torque applied to the shift arm pinch bolt. In the real world, that meant a rider leaned into a curve, reached for an upshift, and found nothing there. Dealers were told to recheck shift levers, a quick fix hiding a deeper flaw. Lost discipline. Torque isn't a suggestion, it's sacred. When that slips, so does craftsmanship. Riders reported near misses, limping home in third or coasting to the shoulder. The repair arrived fast, but not fast enough. For veterans like Mike, this wasn't a bolt issue. It was proof Honda had started building excuses instead of trust. Each of these incidents, brakes that burned, pumps that stalled, levers that vanished, adds to a pattern no recall can hide. Honda's production scandal isn't one moment. It's the sum of countless small oversights that finally stacked high enough to reach daylight. That story didn't come from rumor mills, it came straight from the service logs inked in corporate hands. What the filings actually say. Every great mystery leaves a paper trail, and in this one, the proof sits in plain view. The government filing known as a Part 573 is not written for riders. It is written for lawyers. But inside those dry lines lies everything you need to know. It starts with the defect description, where engineers must spell out exactly what went wrong. Then comes the cause, a single paragraph that decides whether blame falls on a supplier, a material, or the process itself. Finally, the most revealing line of all appears, corrected in production. Those three words are the quiet confession that a fix has already been made on the line, just not yet on your bike. When you learn how to read these filings, the story changes. What looks like an isolated problem becomes a timeline. The defect begins in design, matures in production, spreads through shipping, and finally reaches the recall list. The tone is always neutral, almost sterile, but the subtext screams cost avoidance. If a recall mentions limited population, it means they are trying to contain damage. If it mentions potential for failure, that is code for it already failed. For riders like Mike, the power lies in decoding this language. Reading one of these documents is like pulling a plug after a misfire. Color, residue, and gap tell the real story. A Part 573 isn't just paperwork, it is an X-ray of accountability. Once you know what to look for, you see the pattern in every line. Short-term fixes, long-term consequences. Paper may tell the truth, but grease-stained hands still know where the trail ends. In the real world. Rubber, dirt, and endurance. Some failures are not electronic, not hydraulic, but heartbreakingly simple. A tire that peels at high temperature. A small dirt bike built for a child that shakes itself apart after one jump. These are not high-tech parts. They are the kind of components Honda has built flawlessly for decades. Yet even here, the recall pages tell a new story. One notice described a batch of street tires where the internal bonding compound failed to meet endurance standards. Under prolonged load, the tire could separate from its carcass, causing a loss of control. Another bulletin from the Consumer Product Safety Commission covered a line of CRF minis, bikes meant to teach next generation to ride. It cited improper wheel assembly torque leading to potential detachment. Reading that sentence hits different when you imagine your grandkid on that machine. The filings hide real stories. A spring Saturday, kids geared up, a dirt trail waiting. Then one weak tire layer or loose fastener turns joy into disaster. Machines can fail, but not from shortcuts. Honda's reach, from touring rigs to minis, means one missed torque spec echoes worldwide. When reliability slips, it's worse than rust. Generational trust cracks quietly, one overlooked process at a time. If the smallest tires can fail, the fault starts higher, where deadlines meet decisions. Upstream. To find the root, you have to go upstream, past the factory walls into the vendors who feed its veins. Buried deep in a few recall filings is a short but revealing phrase, corrected in production, supplier requalified. That single sentence tells a story most riders never hear. It means a vendor's part failed inspection, production stopped, and the supplier had to prove it could meet the spec again. In a global supply chain, one shortcut, a rushed resin mix, a skipped inspection, can turn spreadsheets into danger at 70 miles per hour. Quality becomes a tug-of-war between cost and conscience. Veterans know every defect has a signature. Someone always looked away. The term requalified supplier sounds clean, but it's not repair. It's triage. The wound already happened and now they're just trying to stop the bleeding. For riders, this is the part that stings. Honda's legendary precision depended on suppliers that built parts like religion. Tight tolerances, exact alloys, repeatable results. When that faith slips, the machines lose their soul. You can replace parts, but you can't recall pride. On factory floors, numbers might balance, yet trust never does. Night, rain, and a dead switch. It is one thing to read about a defect, it is another to live it. Picture an Africa Twin rider carving through a back road under rain so heavy it feels like gravel. He flips the high beam to spot the next bend, and nothing happens. The lights die. The horn stays silent. The switchgear has corroded itself into silence. The recall text described moisture intrusion leading to oxidation and loss of electrical continuity. Clinical words for a heart-stopping moment. The filings show this failure traced to a simple seal in the left-hand switch housing. In dry tests, it held fine. In real rain, water found the path of least resistance. Within months, the copper contacts inside began to pit and corrode. Honda's fix replaced the housing and added drainage paths, but by then, thousands of bikes had already rolled off the line. To most, it's just a switch. To a rider, it's command and survival. Lights, horn, ignition, everything. Lose it in darkness and you lose control. Engineers label it intermittent function, but riders remember when the road disappeared. That's the real scandal. Ordinary parts failing in extraordinary moments. The Africa Twin recall proved even Honda's bulletproof touring legend wasn't immune to flaws born from pressure, shortcuts, and the slow decay of confidence. Each shorted wire or silent horn was more than failure. It was a warning echoing toward the assembly line. Dealers in gridlock. The first ripple hit the dealerships. Across the country, service bays filled with bikes that could not be sold, could not be released, could not even be test-ridden. The internal bulletin read like a stop sign. Stop sale until remedy confirmed. Those 6 words froze everything. Sales managers stared at rows of shiny new machines they could not move. Mechanics clocked hours doing inspections they could not close. And customers, many already impatient from back orders, watched their deposits sit in limbo. In some shops, owners wheeled their bikes back out of the lot, refusing to wait another month for a factory remedy. Dealers understood the frustration, but their hands were tied. Corporate protocol demanded compliance. One unsigned release form could void insurance or trigger penalties. So the machines sat, gleaming and useless as days turned into weeks. A stop sale may protect riders, but for small-town dealers it's financial quicksand. Interest builds, rent climbs, and bikes turn to inventory statues. Some cannibalize display models just to keep locals riding. Honda's polished apologies meant little to riders losing their season. Trust is measured in miles, not memos. The irony cut deep. How can a brand built on reliability stall its own dealers with rows of unsellable promises? So the writers took matters into their own hands, crafting truth from spreadsheets and socket wrenches. Writers built the case file. When official answers stalled, writers did what writers always do. They took matters into their own hands. Across forums, Facebook groups, and garage meetups, owners began connecting dots faster than corporate engineers could process them. Someone started a spreadsheet tracking VIN ranges. Another writer cross-referenced production dates with failure reports. Within weeks, the community had assembled a more accurate picture than any press release. One post summed it up perfectly. Honda says it's limited, but I've logged 12 affected bikes in my county alone. That simple line became a rallying cry. Mechanics shared photos of corroded switches, swollen impellers, and burnt brake lines. The grassroots database kept growing, each entry proving what the writers already knew. The problem ran deeper than public relations admitted. For veterans like Mike, it was vindication. Years of being told modern bikes were flawless ended when proof sat in their own garages. Betrayal mixed with pride, they found the flaw themselves. Forums became service counters where writers traded specs, parts, and fixes. Knowledge replaced trust. Even dealers quietly leaned on those community logs. Together, writers became Honda's unpaid inspectors, the real quality control the factory should have been all along. Their voices grew too loud to ignore, and somewhere deep in Tokyo, the alarms finally reached the boardroom. If this breakdown hit home, subscribe before the next recall drops. We're exposing what the boardrooms won't, one wrench turn at a time. Real riders, real talk, no corporate filters. Stick around, brother. The truth on two wheels rides here. Inside the gate, after the alarm. Behind factory walls, reality set in fast. Once a recall goes public, the machinery of remediation begins. Assembly lines halt while engineers identify the exact serial ranges of affected parts. Suppliers get emergency calls. Auditors descend with clipboards and torquey wrenches. Every process gets dissected. Who signed the quality check? When the batch was verified? Which shift produced it? One recall filing contained the cold but revealing phrase, corrected in production on February 22nd. To writers, that looks like closure. Inside the plant, it signals chaos. Retooling means thousands of dollars per hour in downtime. Retraining crews means pulling veterans off other lines. New part numbers must be assigned, validated, and distributed through global inventory systems. Every single change ripples through dealers, warehouses, and service networks. Riders rarely see the chaos behind the gates, the human scramble to fix mistakes made by sleepless machines. Factory workers who take pride in precision feel the sting as their craft becomes a defect code. Many blame rushed schedules and risky supplier shortcuts. When production resumes, every part faces double inspection. It's not perfection, it's penance. This wasn't one bad batch, it was a system stumbling over its own speed. The filings may say, corrected in production, but inside the gate, the work is only half done. Because once a reputation cracks, machines can't weld it shut. Reputation isn't stamped in metal, it's forged in how a company answers its own failures. The badge and the burden. For nearly 60 years, the Honda Wing stood for one word: reliability. From the humble Cub to the Gold Wing, riders knew they could cross a continent without fear of failure. That badge wasn't just a logo, it was a contract. Every rider who bought a Honda believed they were buying peace of mind. Now, that belief is being tested. Recent recall charts tell a story too stark to ignore. In 2023 alone, the brand issued more motorcycle safety actions than in the prior 5 years combined. The numbers aren't just statistics, they're proof that even giants can trip over their own processes. Every new filing chips at the trust that took generations to build. Riders like Mike don't hate Honda for this. They mourn it. The company once obsessed over engineering, building parts that lasted longer than their riders would. Now it's fighting to prove that the same discipline still exists. The truth is, no factory can remain flawless forever. Complexity grows, vendors multiply, and quality control becomes a battle against volume. Yet somewhere deep in those assembly halls, the old spirit still breathes. The burden of the badge is not perfection, it's accountability. Riders will forgive mistakes if the company owns them, fixes them, and keeps them from returning. But denial? That's unforgivable. When a brand built on dependability goes silent during crisis, the silence echoes louder than any engine. Honda's loyal base still wants to believe. They still polish their chrome, still tell stories of bikes that ran 100,000 miles without complaint. But belief, once cracked, needs more than apologies. It needs proof. The echo of that shift carried far beyond showrooms. It reached the marble halls of Washington. Rivals smell blood. In every industry, weakness draws competition like heat draws flies. When Honda stumbled, the others didn't hesitate. Within weeks of the first major recall hitting headlines, Yamaha began pushing a new slogan in dealer mailers. Reliability is freedom. Kawasaki followed with print ads highlighting extended warranties and lifetime parts guarantees. They never named Honda outright, but the message was clear enough for anyone who had been paying attention. For decades, Honda owned the word dependable. Every rival tried to chip at that foundation and failed. Now, with public confidence shaken, those cracks looked wide enough to drive a marketing truck through. Yamaha's campaign showcased its proven parallel twin engines surviving torture tests. Kawasaki released footage of its endurance teams logging continuous hours on test dynos without failure. Even Suzuki joined in with a quiet jab, built simple, built to last. The market reacted fast. Used bike values dropped as cautious buyers compared warranties and recalls instead of brand names. Dealers watched riders walk in for Hondas and leave with Yamahas or Kawasaki's. The bikes weren't at fault, perception was. Reputation outweighs horsepower. Ironically, competition may save the industry. Rivalry forces precision, but it also proves a hard truth. Once trust slips, another badge quickly claims the loyalty it lost. And when marketing spins, Washington starts reading 𝐉𝐨𝐻𝐽𝐻. When Washington starts reading 𝐉𝐨𝐻𝐽𝐻. When the recall numbers climbed too high to ignore, regulators stepped in. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration doesn't ride, but it reads every failure report like scripture. What started as a few scattered filings turned into a policy tightening. Internal guidance circulated in late 2024 required manufacturers to report potential defects within 10 days of discovery. For motorcycles, the message was unmistakable. No more silent fixes, no more limited population excuses. Honda wasn't the only one under the microscope, but its visibility made it the example. Congressional oversight committees started asking for quarterly updates. The language in the reports grew sharper. Timely reporting, expanded notification range, supplier traceability. It wasn't politics, it was accountability. The government rarely moves fast, but when it does, manufacturers listen. The new rules forced every brand to modernize tracking. VINs linked globally, digital confirmations required before sales. Progress came with cost, slower deliveries, and heavier paperwork. Riders saw passion buried in bureaucracy. Advocates saw long overdue safety. Honda complied quickly, flooding regulators with updates, yet unease lingered. Because regulation, for all its detail and data, can only mirror what already exists. It cannot rebuild the trust that once rode beneath the badge. Pressure rolls downhill to the factory floor and the vendors. What it costs to fix it right. Every recall leaves a bill, and this one grew fast. To correct in production isn't just a phrase, it's an operation measured in millions. Retooling machines, scrapping defective inventory, requalifying suppliers, and retraining staff all eat into margins. One internal audit estimate from a supplier correction cycle noted projected cost recovery through penalties and adjustments, $3.2 million per quarter. The numbers climb before the fixes even reach the riders. Factories must test new parts, revalidate designs, and re-establish supplier confidence. Each of those steps requires manpower and downtime. Engineers work overtime to revise tooling. Logistics teams reroute shipments to prioritize replacement components. Then comes the human cost. Workers spending extra shifts under stricter inspection quotas. Every wrench turn carries a new signature. Every torque gun log gets verified twice. Every recall ripples outward. Manufacturers hide it, but costs always hit riders through higher prices, parts, and warranty limits. Fixing things right demands time, labor, and pride. Currencies Honda keeps spending. Slowing production hurts efficiency but protects integrity. Each recall leaves scars in the balance sheet and on the showroom floor. That's why new models cost more. Every flaw corrected adds another dollar to the lesson. So here's how you keep your wallet and your ride safe. Your ride, your rules. For all the noise, power still rests where it always has, with the rider. No company, no agency, no recall system can replace personal vigilance. Every machine has a VIN, and that number is your key to control. On Honda's official portal, a quick entry reveals whether your bike has an active campaign. If the line reads "Remedy available," the fix exists. You just need to schedule it. Veteran riders like Mike already live by this rule. Trust but verify. Before a long trip, they check oil, tires, and torque. Now they check recall databases too. It's not paranoia, it's preparedness. In the old days, you listened for warning sounds. Today, you read them in the paperwork. Document every recall. Keep receipts, service logs, and proof when you sell or trade. Those records protect value and show history if parts fail again. Stay alert. A soft pedal, dim light, or throttle hesitation can expose unseen flaws. Report and share it. Beyond scandals and ads, motorcycling's soul lives in that bond between rider and machine, built through trust, miles, and a brotherhood that never fades. Trust doesn't return through slogans. It returns one verified fix at a time. Honda's still building bikes, but the question is, are they still building trust? Recalls come and go, but what they reveal sticks with riders like us. We've kept these machines alive longer than the factories ever planned because we care more about the ride than the quarterly report. If this story hit close to home, drop your thoughts below. What's the worst factory failure you've seen out on the road? Hit that like button if you still believe craftsmanship matters, and subscribe because next week we're tearing.